Dealing with death during the holidays, how to help your family cope today. All right, well, dealing with the holidays without a loved one. Coming up, author Susan Alpert joins us for some very important advice. Welcome back. Well, the holidays are supposed to be a time to celebrate, but if you've lost a loved one, it may be bittersweet for you. It may be hard to cope without that loved one in your life. Joining me this morning is author Susan Alpert, author of Driving Solo. And you've been through this. You lost your husband back in 2008, and you had to pick yourself back up and deal with life, especially through the holidays. So you're joining us today to give us some great tips on how people can pull through the holidays and still feel the joy.
Yeah, it's not easy. I don't care what anybody says.
Tell us a little bit about what happened with your husband, because I've been reading your book, and you guys were the it couple. You were a great couple. They were the power couple.
Yeah, we were pretty great, absolutely. And then he was diagnosed with leukemia out of the clear blue, of course, and within 10 very difficult months, he was gone.
But before that, you guys would travel the world. You were best friends. I like the part in here where you said you get on a plane holding hands, you get off the plane holding hands. You're always holding hands, very much in love until the end.
Yes, very much so. And it was a 46-year marriage when he died. And it kept getting better as we went along. So it was great. And he was great. But he's not here now, and I have the holidays without him. And it's something that I have to face. And a lot of people have to face the same thing.
How did you get through that first holiday for maybe people who've just recently lost a loved one and they're just not even thinking holidays right now?
I think in the very beginning, you're numbed. You don't, everything is bad no matter what you do. And it's a struggle. It's one step in front of the other. And the most important thing I think through all this is to realize you can't have any expectations. However you feel at the very beginning, particularly, that's what it is. If you're going to cry, if you're going to be sad, great. You can visit those places, but you can't take residence there. You've got to do something to get yourself moving. And I liken it to being distracted. With a little child, when they're unruly, you give them something else to do, and for the moment it takes their mind off it. It's the same thing with the holidays. You've got to get yourself out of yourself.
And when I was reading your book, you mentioned it was hard for you to pick up and, you know, get going. You really focus here on dealing with grief and the business of financial survival, because you were having to deal with all the financial stuff afterward and having to do all the paperwork even though you were grieving. For people going through that, what helped you, and how did this book come about?
The book came about because it took me so long to get all the pieces together, and I don't care if you have an enormous estate or a small amount of holdings. There are so many cards to take care of and accounts, and it's just massive with the government. And I just forged ahead. It took me over a year, a good year and a half, to get through it. And when it was all over, I said, okay, now what? I've handled this. And I said, I now know something that I can share with somebody else so they don't have to struggle through. So I put together a program called Chaos to Control, which tells people what to do, breaks everything down into 3 phases, so you're not totally overwhelmed with everything that comes in. And then when I did this, I said, well, I can do more than that. I can tell people how to go about this in a book form, so it's easy to get. There
you go, and it was a way to distract you maybe and kind of help you grieve along the way, and maybe a little bit of therapy along the way as well.
Absolutely, it did serve a lot of purpose.
And we have some tips here too, you know, how to cope, family support, you know, definitely build that network, which you talk in your book. Take time for yourself, and set some boundaries, as you just mentioned, and know your expectations, and once again, honor your emotional life. If you have to step out, maybe, you know, shed a tear. A self-serving question for me: I lost my mother 4 years ago, my brother 7 years ago, and still during the holidays, it's hard. It never gets easy. And it's like, how do you bring them up? You don't, it's a joyous time, you get together, but you don't want to, you know, be the one to bring them up and draw the crowd down. What would you recommend? How do you bring them up to remember them, honor them, but still be happy?
I honestly believe that that's what you have to do, is bring them up. And in a really positive way, toast them. Here's to whoever it is that you've lost. They'd be having such a good time today. They'd be laughing at Uncle Joe over there, the way he's eating his ham or whatever they're doing. Bring him up in a very, or her, in a very light, positive way. So, and then you acknowledge it. That person's not there, but they're kind of all with us anyway.
They're still there spiritually, right?
Absolutely. And some of the jokes that you may tell or things you may do are things that you picked up from that person. So they really do live with us in some way.
All right. Thank you very much. We're flat out of time, but I appreciate you coming down here to help us and give us your tips. Driving Solo, if you want to pick it up, a great read. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Dinah. Nice to meet you.